Hello again, and welcome to War Stories Behind the Scenes Tales from the Front Lines of the Media. I am your host, Tom Curley. How the hell are you today? For those of you just tuning in, what we do is I was in the broadcast industry for about 40 years, worked for CBS. I was a director and audio guy, technical director, and sometimes I did Windows. And I get together with old friends of mine and we tell war stories about crazy shit that happened behind the scenes and in front of the scenes. And today I've got a special guest, a really special guest, one of my oldest friends, Mr. Joe Marcus. Joe, how the hell are you? And welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going?
I know it's going great. So, I've been wanting to have you on the show since I conceived of the show, because we go way, 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 way back. I think I
Yes.
might have been there maybe a year or two longer than you, but only
Oops.
maybe by a year or so. Um, you have the distinction, which I think is amazing. You were the audio guy for the CBS Morning News for all of its iterations from 19 basically since the
81?
CBS Morning News was invented 81 since it was invented.
Yeah,
Before
yeah.
the morning news, there was this really in-depth news show for kids called Captain Kangaroo, and it was on for years, and then they canceled it and replaced it with the morning news, the
It was
CBS Morning
still
News.
on,
So
actually. When I started, it was still on. I think it had been reduced to like a half hour show, maybe. And it was on, but it was still on at least for a year or so when we were on in the morning. There used to be an early morning news that there were different people. I know even Leslie Stahl did a morning news. I think Walter Cronkite did a morning news, but they got
wow,
serious with it when they had started Sunday morning with Charles Kuralt, and then
right,
decided they were going to go to the 5 days a week and using the same
right,
set, the Charles Kuralt Sunday morning set, but they wanted a
right.
co-anchor, and they brought in an unknown person to broadcasting anyway, named Diane Sawyer, who
Diane
had worked
Sawyer.
in the right. She worked with Nixon doing his memoirs and stuff like that. She had worked in the
Yeah, she
administration.
she was a speech writer for yeah,
Yeah,
she worked on Nixon's book. That's right. That was her claim to fame.
but I
Well,
don't think
when I
she had
first
any
came over,
broadcasting experience
I don't, something, I don't
at that
I don't
point.
think so either. Um she was married to Nichols and May. Nichols, the director. Why am I blanking on
Yeah, but
his
that was
name?
much
Oh
later
well,
on. Yeah,
senility.
yeah,
Much later on. Oh, okay.
yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Captain Kangaroo was still on. I remember because I actually walked onto the set to watch it, which I thought was amazing. I'd been over there for a couple of weeks, but then when I got assigned to the morning news, because we were there at 1 o'clock in the morning. That's when we were supposed to be there. But anyway, I was walking around the second floor on my way to the set, and on the second floor they kept all of the props for all the soap operas and all sorts of things. Well, I
Right.
I turned a corner, and there in the corner, amongst a whole bunch of junk, was Grandfather Clock, and I went, "Oh my God, that's Grandfather Clock!" I grew up with Captain Kangaroo, and there I was, like I could just reach out and touch it. So it was very, very cool. So obviously we've got
But wait, let me
a,
give you
a
a
ton of
quick
stories.
Captain
Being
Kangaroo story before we get into morning news. The
sure,
very first day that I started at CBS, they were kind of walking me around just to show me the studios. I had already worked for ABC for 4 years and Channel 13, so I was already a mixer and I knew how to do that. So they're walking me around, and we go into I'm not sure what studio it was. It might have been um, 42, but at any rate, we go in there, and they're doing Captain Kangaroo, and they said, "Oh, this," and it's like, wow, the Captain Kangaroo. And the audio guy, who they asked, what'd you do before, and I told them. So they said, "Oh, why don't you just stand here for a little while and watch it." So I was standing there and talking to them, and about 10 minutes later, they get a call, and they're huddling in the corner, and they came over and they said, "Look, Joe, um, Mike, the audio guy has to leave. He has an emergency. Do you think you could mix this?" And I said, I don't. The board was, it was the old Gates board, totally
Oh
foreign to
yeah.
me. And I said, well, if it's all labeled and it's just a question of mixing it and not having to deal with the patch bay because I wasn't familiar with it, yeah, I think I could do it. So I sat down and I mixed the rest of the day. I mixed Captain Kangaroo, which was just a crazy, crazy thing. And everything went well. And as a matter of fact, because of that, about, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks later, when he went on vacation, they actually had me come in and do his vacation relief for like a week or two. So yeah, that was my
Wow.
Captain Kangaroo first day
Wow.
mixing story.
I never heard that. How is it how is it you never told me that story? That's
I don't know
freaking
what, it was just a
awesome.
weird thing. I was kind of scared. And actually, there was one little hiccup where all of a sudden they said, "Oh, we're not getting audio for a second," and I hadn't done anything. We're all hearing audio in the control room. So I said, "Does anybody have a telephone number of like a master control transmission, something like that?" Somebody had a number, and I called them, and they said, "Oh yeah, we hear you fine." And then all of a sudden, tape says, "Oh, we got it. We're hearing fine." So I didn't even do anything, and it was fixed. But they loved the fact that I could not panic, deal with it, and maybe that's why they called me back. But that's my Captain Kangaroo story.
That's great. And
So
you bring up a very, very essential point. Not panicking. Because if there's one
yes,
thing that people in television love to do is panic. Panic first,
yes,
ask questions later. The slightest sign that you're going to panic. Oh my god. All right, I probably have told this story before, but I'm going to tell it again. As far as panic, um, the producers loved to panic, especially if somebody couldn't hear something. Um,
yes,
it could be that. All right, sometimes we would be doing a remote from, say, Australia, which would be bouncing off of two, maybe three satellites. Well, this may come as a shock, but a satellite is 22,000 miles up in the sky. And even at the speed of light to go 22,000 up, 22,000 back, 22,000, it takes a finite amount of time, like sometimes
yep,
almost maybe a second. So, so you would say something, and then the remote, would not hear it, and he'd be standing there. Well, in that second, easily three or four producers, he can't hear, it's not working, audio, what's going on? And then the guy would answer the question, and we would have to go, wait for it, wait for it. So there was a day, I don't know if you were there, you probably were, but I was mixing. So you must have been, either on a break or something. But anyway, the morning news, we used to have easily on a given day 5, 10, sometimes 15
right,
remotes.
right. A lot of remotes.
It's a lot of remotes, which means a lot of phone calls, and a lot of ways for it to go bad. You know, phone line drops out. There's a zillion things that can go wrong. Well, this happened one day where, like, almost every remote had a problem. Okay, it wasn't our fault. It just happened. A phone line would drop. A guy he wasn't wearing his earpiece. So remote after remote after remote. You know the you know the remote can't hear Dionne. The remote can't hear Bill Curtis. So finally, after like, I don't know, the sixth or seventh one, I, like an idiot, made a dry, sarcastic, funny comment. I hit the key to the control room. And after the latest remote, they couldn't hear each other. I said to nobody in particular, gee, I hope Bill can hear Dionne. And I said it
I
as
remember
a
this. I
joke.
was there. Yes.
You were there. Well, seconds later, all of a sudden, a producer in the back goes, Bill can't hear Dionne. Bill can't hear Dionne. Now, you got to realize they're sitting on the set next to each other.
Next to each
Okay.
other. Right.
Next to each other. Okay. And one of them he bursts into the audio booth. Bill can't hear Dionne. Why can't Bill hear Dionne? And we're just looking at him. I'm trying not to laugh, right? And then there's another producer who's on the intercom. He's on the IFB. He goes, Bill, can you hear Dionne? Bill, can you hear Dionne? And Bill Curtis, you can see, he looks at Dionne. Dionne looks at him, and they go, what the fuck is wrong with these people? But yeah, that was a typical day in on the morning news. Yeah, you're right.
Right.
Most of our jobs were just tamping down the panic, that was always going on. So you had a couple of cool stories.
Well, talk about the panic. Go ahead. I know you wanted to.
Go ahead.
Tell the panic of the stapler story.
The stapler. Okay. I've been wanting to tell this story. Now, you were there, so I'm going to tell it, and then I want to get your side of it because,
okay,
this is how I remember it. And if I remember it wrong, I don't care. It makes for a great story. Okay, so this was in one of the early iterations of the morning news, and I remember that all the writers were on the set, right? It was part of the set, so
Right.
you saw them all in the background typing. Now back then, they didn't have computers. The way they wrote script for the teleprompter was they actually had these typewriters that had really big fonts because the print in a teleprompter had to be big, all right? And
Right.
and they had to make like 6 copies. So they had this special paper that they typed the scripts on. They made a lot of noise. And so it was, noisy. So sometimes there'd be a lot of noise and sometimes there wouldn't be. Now, we had an executive producer, George Merlis, right? That was his name?
Yes, definitely.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
Cool guy, but he was a screamer. He ran a tight ship. He was shouting out orders all the time. He was quick to scream, and then 10 seconds later he completely forgot about it, and we were on to the next crisis. So
We
there
also
one
did
day,
very well in the ratings at that point in time.
Yeah, we were doing good. So you and I, there was 3 of us. You and I and Jeff, who was mixing the show. Okay, now Jeff, for some reason, felt that he had to interject himself when he didn't really have to. So we're on the air, and suddenly on the set you heard a thud. Something happened. Somebody dropped a tape, a book. Who knows?
Right. It could have been anything.
Well, could have been anything. Okay? So the executive producer, Merlis, he immediately goes, what the hell was that? What the hell was that noise? Well, nobody knew. The director didn't know, but our audio guy, he hits the intercom key, goes, sounded to me like a staple gun. And I remember you and I, we looked at each other and went, what are you talking about? So now Merlis starts screaming, God damn it, what the hell is a staple gun on the set? Blah, blah, blah. And he's just screaming. Well, now I had a set of headphones on so I could hear what the cameramen heard. And so the director, he could talk to the cameraman and the stage manager and everybody else. So now you got to realize back then the stage manager, who was part of the DGA, he was the director of the floor. And I remember this
Right.
stage
And heard
manager,
everything.
he, and heard everything. And it was his job to tell the talent what camera they were supposed to talk to. During the commercials, he would tell the cameramen where he just ran everything. He was the voice of the director, okay, and he ran a tight ship. Well, he heard this kerfuffle in his headphones, and I don't know why, but he somehow decided that the executive producer needed a staple gun immediately.
Yeah.
And for some reason, it was his job to make this happen. So as now what we're describing took, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes. It took place for a while. So meanwhile, we in the control room had moved on. But I'm listening to this over, in the headphones. And what I hear is the stage manager is in a panic. And he's going, "We need a staple gun. We need a staple gun right now. Is there a staple gun anywhere?" One of the stagehands goes, I think there's a staple gun in that cabinet over there. "Well, get it." Well, we can't because it belongs to the supervisor, the head stagehand, and he's out today, and it's his personal locker. "Well, open it up." I said, "Well, I can't do that. It's So he calls security. 10 minutes later, a guy from security comes up with a bolt cutter. And the stage manager says, "Cut that lock off." Now, I didn't really quite hear it, but it was something along the lines of, "By the power vested in me by the Directors Guild of America, I'm ordering you to cut that bolt off." And they're going, "Well, but you're the DGA, and that's a stagehand. That's IATSE. That's a different union." Nonetheless, the security guard cuts the bolt. He cuts the lock off. They open the locker, and sure enough, there's a staple gun in there. So the stage manager gives it to this poor stagehand and tells him to go as fast as he can into the control room to give the executive producer this staple gun. Now, why couldn't he do it himself? Well, it's a stagehand locker. It's a stagehand staple gun. It's a union thing. Obviously, a stagehand would have to do this. So the next thing you know, this poor stagehand, out of breath and sweating, runs into the control room, and he sticks this staple gun right in front of Merlis's face. To which Merlis goes, "What the hell is that?" And the guy goes, "It's a staple gun. What the fuck are you doing with the staple gun? Get that goddamn thing out of my face. What the hell is going on?" Blah, 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 blah. Well, all I remember was that there was apparently meetings for about a week. There were charges. There were union violations. There were complaints from the stagehand union. There were complaints that the DG. It was just went on and on and on. And I remember people, "Do you know what happened, Tom? Are you aware of what happened?" And I would go, "No, I really don't know what happened." So that's what went on. How do you remember it?
I remember it really as practically. Yeah. It must have been something like he was yelling about, "What's that about a staple gun? I want to get that, or get that staple gun." And it was interpreted that, he needs a staple gun, even though that wasn't what made the noise. And of course, it set the whole thing in motion about running around trying to find a staple gun for the executive producer. And I do remember something about that they had to break into a locker. I didn't even remember about, cutting the lock off, but they probably would have had to. And and then coming in with a staple gun, and it's like, what the hell is this?
Those were a weird thing. That was not an abnormal day. Like, do you remember the day? It was 9:00, and that's when the show ended, and that's when was our out time. And they came by and they said, "You have to stand by. We're updating the show." And we said, "Oh, what's the story?" He said, "Apparently there's a combined Caribbean task force that's invading Grenada." And everybody went, "What?" Where the hell is Grenada? And what the fuck is a combined Caribbean task force? Well, it turns out it was Ronald Reagan. It was the United States Navy, and I think a few people from one of those all you can eat resorts. They were invading Grenada. It was just days like that, just the strangest things. So anyway, uh, getting back to you had a great story with was it Dionne Warwick that you were telling
Well,
me?
let me go to they they had a habit sometimes if and this stems from the one of the earliest ones, which was I'm going to go to that first, which was the Four Tops, the original Four Tops. They came in and they were just supposed to sing to a track. Very simple. It was a mono track, and then they would sing to it. So we had four mics for them, and they brought in the tape. And that morning they bring it in, and we put it on the machine and play it, and it's the whole song with all their voices on it. And it's supposed to be just the backing track. So it's already 6 o'clock in the morning. We're going to go on an hour. This is the right track is locked away in some recording studio somewhere. No chance of getting it. So it's like, what do we do? So the first thing they do is the guys said, we've been doing this forever. We'll do it a cappella. And it was live. And that's exactly what they did. They sang the whole song completely a cappella with they even had a little set out there for them, and they did it perfectly. Now, it lacked something without having any of the track, but it is what it is, and that's about the best we could do. They were supposed to do also a closing song at the end for credits, and then for that they decided, and this may have been the only time that they said, you know what, we'll just, you know, I had a record there of their greatest hits that I just brought in, and they decided play the record and they'll lip sync it. And they did that leaving. And I remember I felt terrible that they had to do it. They lip synced perfectly. I mean, I knew they were lip syncing and I'm watching it and it goes, and it's like, damn, they are good. They are right on with this. But from then on, we always try to tell them if somebody's going to sing to a track, get the track to me the day before so we can make sure it's the right thing. And a number of times they brought the wrong thing and we were able to correct it. Okay, you got to bring the right one, get it over here. But of course, one other time later on, Dionne Warwick is she had some of her songs that she redid later on in a new style. I think this, and of course, at the last second, she came in. They couldn't get the track earlier. She comes in, wrong track, completely vocals on it. Can't do anything. Can't get the right one. So they said, "Is there anything you could do?" So when I knew from listening to the album of the original versions of the songs, they had wide stereo separation. And I said, I might be able to remove the vocal, which is much easier now, but it wasn't then. But I said I could probably remove the vocal and we could see what it sounds like and then just end up with the backing track. So I did it. I had to record the record, reverse phase on it, cancel out the lead vocal, which was centered, and I played it for the producer. They came in. They said, "This is great. This is great." There's still only one problem. It's too long. The original song was too long. They like to have everything shortened. Can you edit it down and make it shorter? It's like, all right. So now I've already got the backing track. So now I listen to it and it's like, okay, so there are 8 bars before it starts. I'll cut out 4 of them. There's a there's a whole solo part in the middle. For the middle 8 bar. Get rid of all of that. So I did all of that and I listened to it at just about the time that they needed. Okay, let's bring Dionne Warwick into the audio booth and play. And this is getting close to air now already. All right, so I start playing her the track and she's listening to it. It's like, Yeah, okay. She goes, I'm not sure exactly when to come in. Can you sing it to me? And all of a sudden, it's like, and there's a whole bunch of people in there. There's Dionne Warwick, there's producers, there's her people, everybody's in there. And she looks at me and says, can you sing it to me? And that's like, oh my God, I'm, can I sing her? It's not even in my key. What can I tell you?
Right?
And I said, what am I going to do? And I said, okay, So I hit the thing and plays, and then I go, and you come in here, and I started to sing it, and I didn't even know every word, but it was like good enough. And I sit and I went through it, and I go, and then we got up to the chorus part in the middle, and I said, all right, I cut this completely out, so you just jump to the end. And she looked at me, she goes, I got it. No problem. Boom. She was out of there. We started setting up for the show, and it was perfect. She came on, she remembered exactly what it was, and she did the whole thing. But I was mortified that I was singing to I mean, it's not just that I'm singing to her. She's standing 2 feet away from me and I'm singing to her. So yeah, it was something that I didn't forget that easy.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. That is awesome.
Yeah,
Well,
I don't want to
it's
be in that position again.
again, yes. Well, that's the great thing with working with pros, and we'll get to those stories, but not right now because we did it again. We have wasted a half hour, but at least we got a good laugh out of it. Joey, this is the first of many broadcasts. Thank you for coming on. We got to go to the mandatory plugs, of course. My other co-host, Gary Armstrong's lovely wife, Marilyn, does a blog called Serendipity: Seeking Intelligent Life on Earth. Fool's errand if there ever was one. Voicescapes Audio
Yes.
Theater, my theater group, ever the best in audio theater and drama. A half-hour radio show, the cult radio hit from the 80s, is still here thanks to the internet. And of course, my co-podcast, Get Off My Lawn with me, where we talk about life, the universe, and everything. Joey, this has been frigging awesome. We will do this again very soon. And until then, toodles.